whether that's in the Caribbean or rest of the world. Thank you to our host, Debbie Roberts, who's joining us today. If you came to our session yesterday, you will have seen Debbie, and Debbie is very well known from Macmillan Education Caribbean. But if you haven't seen Debbie yet, she's an experienced science educator, author, and teacher trainer. And she's also one of the authors of our Mission Science and Discover Science series. Thank you for everyone for letting us know where you're from. Lots from Trinidad. Hi, everyone. So this session will run for an hour, and afterwards you'll receive a certificate and the slides for you to share with your colleagues and catch up on if you think you've missed anything, or check back on in future. And then in the next sort of day or so, we'll pop this all in an email, and you can have a look and share this with your colleagues. Please do use the chat box if you've got any questions, and Debbie can answer these as best as she can. And yes, enjoy the fantastic session that Debbie has got prepared for you. Hi, everyone. Brilliant. On that note, I will pass you on to Debbie. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for giving up your extremely valuable time to attend this second session. Well, I can see that some of you were with us last night, so that's great. Well, last night for me, yesterday afternoon for yourselves. So that's lovely. I'm recognising a few names there. As I said yesterday, and for those that were not here yesterday, please use the chat box. This is all about you. This is for you. Yes, I've researched and spent time putting this together, but I'm really not bothered because you will get the slides anyway. So if you've got any comments, questions, you want to share anything, please do use the chat box, because it's lovely that we can run these webinars, and it's great that we can continue to progress our professional development, and that's great. But it's not the same as being face to face, and I really do miss being out there in the Caribbean with you teachers, sharing your amazing good practice, and it makes the resources that I then go away and author and write for you, it makes it very personal and for you, and I think that makes it much better for all of us. So I do miss being out there with you. Hello, Jamaica, Antigua, Belize, St. Lucia, Barbados. I've not been to St. Lucia or Belize yet, so if you want to invite me, feel free, please. Oh, thank you, Miriam. It's, no, Frederick, 1 p.m. in Jamaica. Hello, it's 7 p.m. in the UK at the moment. So, we will be continuing to look at inquiry-based learning, so we'll have a little whistle-stop tour of what inquiry-based learning is, just as an introduction and a recap and a review of yesterday. But to show how well the chat box is used, and I do keep going like that because I'm reading it as I'm speaking. I can't multitask. I need to stop doing that. And just to prove how well it's used, we got a really interesting question at the end of the session yesterday, and I did sort of loosely explain and discuss it a little bit, but I just wanted to expand on it a little bit further, because the wonderful question we were asked yesterday was, how do we use a support staff effectively in an inquiry-based classroom? And that's an extremely good question, and it often does get overlooked. And I started my career many years ago as a Sunday school teacher, and then I went on to be a classroom assistant. So I was a support teacher, and so now you've reminded me from that amazing question. I did, Turks and Caicos, hello, I did once land at the airport there, but I never touched the ground, so I don't class that as visiting there either. So if you want to invite me there too. So it was a really good question, and one that I think that we really should expand on, because we should value our support teachers, and I'm sure you do, Because I'll tell you something, when I had a support teacher and then the following year I didn't, you really do miss them. Because here in the UK, budgets are really tight at the moment, and lots of teachers don't have that support anymore, and we have learned how much we valued it and how much we relied on. Now, in an inquiry-based classroom, a lot of the emphasis is on the students, and it's not so much on the teacher. As the famous author Alison King wrote, we shouldn't be at centre stage. We should be the guide on the side, and most certainly not the sage on the stage, meaning not the old person who stands at the front telling everyone what to do. So Miriam, yes, there will be certificates awarded after the session. So you will get a certificate, and you'll also get a copy of these slides from all 3 sessions. So you can use those to share with colleagues, you can use them for yourself. These are really quick sessions, so it's great that you get the slides because you can review them, reflect upon them when you've got time. And if you do have any questions after that, please do let me know. So going back to the support teachers, in an inquiry-based classroom, we want the children to lead their learning. And so staff, more than ever, need to understand what we're actually doing. Because the focus of an inquiry-based classroom is to support students in the development of skills. At the moment, because of the pandemic, as we looked yesterday, we haven't got the luxury of any additional time. And so we can't afford to teach something and then go back and then teach it again and then go back again. We just can't do that anymore. We haven't got the time. We're playing catch up. Now, if we are brave enough to devote our time to training children in developing skills, you will see that they make progress much quicker than in a normal, average, ordinary, traditional rather, classroom. There's nothing normal or average about teaching, I know that. But they will make progress, and they'll make rapid progress, and it won't just be in one subject area, it'll be in all the subject areas. So we need to train our support staff and anyone else who visits or supports in the classroom. So even if you've got parents coming in, really, we should educate them in what inquiry-based learning is. So they really should be involved in the planning stages so that they can see what you're doing and why you're doing it and what skills you're trying to develop from it. They really should be involved in any CPD or any training. Now, I know that is a big ask. It's a tall order to ask support staff to be involved in training and things like that. But maybe using these slides, you could select the most appropriate for support staff and train them in the skills and show them and how we do that and what we're intending to do and how we want the children to lead their learning. And so my advice would be, use some of these slides and share them not only with colleagues, teaching colleagues, but also support teachers and any support staff in the classroom. If you have any more questions, please do ask. So welcome everyone. More people from Jamaica, welcome to you, and good afternoon. And let's move on and see what the objectives for this session are. If that's not fully answered your question, please do get back to me and we'll develop that further, and I'll spend more time on it with you for sure. So again, we're looking at inquiry-based teaching and learning, EBTL. I call it EBL because I always think that it's about learning. Learning comes first, so it can be EBL, EBTL, it can be inquiry-based, it can be activity-based, skills-based, they all mean the same thing. I want you to leave these sessions being confident to plan, to deliver, to develop, and to be brave enough to let go of some of that control and let the children really, really develop their skills and become independent, resourceful, and resilient learners. Because more than ever, that's what we need during these catch-up recovery times. We'll look at sound and light energy today for the simple reason that that was the content that I was asked to cover. So I guess we're looking at a bit of physics really at primary level, but we will be looking at this from an inquiry-based approach. A lot of the resources that I'm using tonight are from the mission science. I keep saying tonight, knowing full well it's afternoon there. I do apologise. St Martin, somewhere I have been. I have been to St Martin. I've been to Jamaica too. Good afternoon and welcome, Jenny. So we'll be looking at sound and light energy, but from an inquiry-based point of view. The resources I'm using are from Mission Science, simply because I co-authored Mission Science. I solo authored Discover Science, which is the scheme that follows on from primary. And so they're the resources that I've got readily available. That's the only reason I'm using them. You can use your own resources, but I'm trying to show you how to use them in an inquiry-based classroom. So I hope that makes sense. So let's review something we did yesterday. So I would be saying now, if we were all in the room together, who was with us yesterday? How many are here today? But I can't really do that. So for the people who were here yesterday, you can test your knowledge and see how much you can remember. And the ones that weren't, here we go. So if I was to ask you to give me one word or a couple of words to describe what knowledge without understanding is, which vocabulary would you use? What is knowledge without understanding? Whoa, well done, Rihanna. It's sterile. And Shalene, yeah, that's great. It's useless. There is absolutely no point to it. It's useless. It's sterile. It's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. And what's the main use of this knowledge then? What's the main use for it? How can we use it? We certainly can't use it to pass exams very successfully. Let's put you out of your misery. Oh, let's just see if someone's getting it here. I've got someone type recall. Okay, so it's only used for recall. Understanding the content goes to a much, much deeper intellectual level, and it allows students to apply that knowledge. Now, if we think about Webb's levels of knowledge, if we think about Bloom's taxonomy, understanding is at the bottom. Recall, knowledge, they're all lower down in the skills, in the levels, because it's just memorized. It's memorizing information. It's not truly understanding it. I once spoke to a student and I said, you know, you do so well in the classroom when it comes to an assessment and it all goes wrong for you. What's wrong? Why does this happen? And she said, you've taught me for 2 years and I know what answers you're looking for. So she never really understood anything in the classroom. She was just mimicking. She was just reading things out or repeating what she'd heard me say to feel successful and to get that praise. But in actual fact, she never really understood it to that level that it got into the long-term memory and she was able to recall and then apply it to new situations. And as we look at Bloom's, we realise that at the top there, we've got synthesis, we've got analysis, we've got evaluation. We can't synthesize knowledge if we don't actually have it. And so if we've not understood to a deeper level, we won't recall it, we won't be able to use it, and we certainly won't be able to synthesize it. And in most assessments around the world now, though I don't like, yes, it is, Frederick, it's like having a car with no fuel. Exactly. Lovely to look at, not very useful. That's a really good analogy. I like that. I'll use that if you don't mind. So yeah, we need to get it into that long-term memory, and so we can be more successful, because around the world, whether I like assessment or not, at the moment it is the only way that we can measure how well students are doing, and we can compare them. So if we're an employer or we're running a university, we know who we can recruit because they've been more successful in assessment, and at the moment that is the only way that we can do it. So if we want to be successful in assessments currently, we have to get to the synthesis level. Otherwise, we don't get to that higher academic level. So I'm going to say that this is session 3, even though that'll confuse you, and it's session 2 because it's day 2, but we did quite a lot in inquiry-based learning, and I separated that into section 1, and then we moved straight on to the environment. Today, we've just reviewed inquiry-based learning, and we will be looking more at light and sound energy today. So, just as a recap, what is inquiry-based learning? Well, we're talking about the encouragement and the development of skills. Questions are important because they drive inquiry-based learning. We want the students to ask the questions. If students ask the questions, what does it mean? It means they're interested, it means they're engaged, and it means we've ignited their curiosity. When we've achieved that, right, different forms of assessment can assist in a more complete understanding and application of knowledge at higher level. Skills such as analysis and synthesis can be employed. Exactly, Rihanna, exactly my point. We need to be at that deeper intellectual level, and assessment tells us whether we're there or not, if it's good assessment and if it's used correctly. And they're big ifs, aren't they, really? That's a whole different webinar. So when they're curious, they will ask questions. They then drive their own learning because they themselves want to find the answer. We're not telling them information. We're not didactically teaching them. We are guiding them through their curiosity of content. So how do we get them to be curious? Well, these are some things cut and pasted from some of my books for Mission Science. And the way that we can get them curious using these is we can talk about fascinating facts. We can say, did you know? We can share how real scientists in the world are making sense of things and sharing their ideas. And as I've said before, when authoring any resources for any region, anywhere in the world, I try my best to find scientists who work and who live and who come from those areas, because I want students to not think that scientists are some far off people that are untouchable and they can never, ever, ever aspire to be them. I want them to see that this person who comes from their community, their country, has been successful in science, and so can they. And as I've said to you many times before, a student, very disengaged, very bored with school student, said to me, "It's all right for you, miss. You come from, your family have got loads of money." And I said, "What makes you think that?" And he said, "Because you're a teacher, so you've been to university, so you must be rich." And I said, "Oh, right, so where do you think I live?" "Oh, you must live in a big house, a posh estate." And I said, "I lived just down the road. I went to that school over there." And it's powerful because it suddenly makes students realise that they can achieve their goals, because you have. On these pages there are also some brilliant artwork and pictures that really inspire and really are thought-provoking. And that's where I get the curiosity from. I call it agenda building. I really thought I invented agenda building, where we had some kind of stimulus, then questioning, and then the children investigated and explored for themselves. I've since found out that it was actually invented in 1980, and regardless of what you think, I wasn't teaching then. So at the heart is a good question. It doesn't have to have a right or a wrong answer. It's just curiosity. When that student says, "But what if?" That's the magic. And often we're driven, we're in a rush, we're rushing around, and we ignore that magical moment because we've got an agenda to attend to and we need to get through it, and we haven't got the luxury of time. But when they're asking, that's when they're curious, and that's when they will learn. And we need to be mindful of that. And I know that's difficult. I just want to point out again, because this question has been asked of me several times, the talking points in all of my resources are not assessment questions. They are to inspire discussion, because discussion, communication, and collaboration are some of the top skills in inquiry-based learning. So on every single thing I've ever written, there are talking points or discussion point questions to get that curiosity going, to get those discussions sparked. Again, why are discussions important? Students learn more from each other than they do anyone else. And so if we can get the discussion going in the right direction and we can guide them, you'll start to hear that useful vocabulary being used. They will be confident to use the sometimes complex vocabulary that is in science that normally they'd avoid. They would not put the hand up in a lesson and say some of the words like, I don't know, hemoglobin or dichotomous. They just wouldn't, because I'm struggling, so they will. But if they're talking to a friend or a group, they're more likely to use that vocabulary. Then they can understand it, then they can spell it, and then they can read it. So why is it important? Because in science, we need to blend knowledge, information, and the process of practicing science as well. So there's a lot going on. And so inquiry-based learning does actually address this problem, and it addresses it successfully because students are able to understand the knowledge and use the skills and understand the process of scientific methodology. And again, in mission science, you have lots of information about this, especially in some of the teaching notes. So we're looking at forms of energy. Now, there are lots of forms of energy. I would say to the children, tell me some forms of energy. That would be my introduction. What forms of energy do you know? And someone said to me, but they won't know any because they've not learnt it. Yes, they will. They will have seen someone charging a smartphone. They'll have used a computer. They will have watched TV. They will probably have, I don't know, used a kettle or a stove. They'll know lots of kinds of energy. They can see in the classroom, so they must have experienced light energy. They can hear a radio or a smartphone ringing or a video that you might be playing or some music. So they're aware of sound energy also. So we want them to be encouraged to make sense of the world around them. And so in the early stages of this learning, we want students to observe. Remember, observe, we don't just mean look. We mean to actually explore, to gather evidence, to collect data. So encourage them to be in the place where they are, whether that be in a classroom where they can't move around much, or it might be that you've got an outdoor space and you can go in and out of the classroom, and encourage the students to carry out some research. It's a good idea if they're working in a group for this, because group work develops communication and collaboration, teamwork, it develops team leadership, which are all key skills in inquiry-based learning. So there we've got the students, and they're investigating, they're exploring the real world around them, where they are today, and they're developing these amazing skills from such a simple investigation. Now you can see that there's a kind of a table there at the bottom, so we can use tables of results. Don't get bogged down drawing tables of results. Yes, they do need to draw a table of results eventually, but they also need to learn the science. Model good tables of results. Show them that the independent variable, the thing that they are looking at, model that goes in the first column in all tables of results, and then they can make sense of other tables of results, and they can start to analyse data, secondary data, which is also a science skill. We often develop lots of workbooks and worksheets which have associated tables of results to some of these investigations that I'm talking about now. So that's a useful thing that you might want to research a little bit. They might be useful to you. But yeah, get them to get used to using tables of results. I used to always show my students, I used to give them an envelope, a used envelope, and say, record your results on there, and they'd scribble things down, and I'd ask them questions and they wouldn't know. And they soon realised the importance of a nice, neat, organised table of results, because it helps you recall and it helps you understand. And so for that, I would give them a table of results, or some students might want to draw their own, but model it. Let them see that it's not something that's to be feared. So how can we teach light and sound? Using Enquiry-based teaching and learning. So again, I'm using my resources because obviously, as I said, they're at hand for me. So we can start looking at electricity. We can look at what is electrical energy, what devices actually use electricity, get them to list them, to record them. I've seen lots of students using voice recorders. Some students are put off by putting pen to paper. So in the initial stages, using voice recorders is really good. The recording will be shared with you. Oh, right. Okay. So someone's asking about the recording of the sessions. Okay. So you can access them. You'll get access to them after the third session tomorrow. Okay. So looking at electrical energy. So what devices can you see? Looking around the room, what devices can you see? What devices use electricity that you can hear? Do you use electricity to cook your food, cool your home, heat your water? Then chemical energy. Chemical energy is often something that they find quite confusing. There's a lot of misconceptions linked to chemical energy. They think it's some kind of a chemical reaction, but actually it's anything where energy is stored. So it could be stored in food. So we store chemical energy in food. We store chemical energy in batteries. It's a chemical reaction that releases the electrons that complete the circuit, and we get electricity moving around the circuit, which makes devices work. So it can be from batteries, it can be from food, it can be in a root vegetable. Use your creativity, whatever you've got available. Mechanical energy is when something moves, and it's generally linked to electricity as well, as in an engine or a motor. But in actual fact, when we move our legs, we're using mechanical energy as well. So the students are challenged to make a Venn diagram on this page, and that's EBTL. It's Enquiry-based teaching and learning. Plus you can see there are talking points, so we're encouraging the discussion. Often the talking points are criticised. People say, but how would they know that? Well, what we're trying to establish is what they do actually know, and are there any misconceptions already developing? So often the talking point questions come for the learning, and that's to inform you and also to inform the students. So when they say, I haven't learned anything today, you can say, well, at the beginning, I asked you what forms of energy you knew, and you said none, and now you've just told me you know 4. So yes, you have learned something and you have made progress. So they can be used in so many different ways. You'll see that on a lot of the pages there's things like a challenge, and that is also inquiry-based learning, because we're trying to push the students to those higher levels up blooms, and we're also trying to push them to that deep intellectual knowledge and understanding, and so they can store it in the long-term memory and retrieve it and recall it successfully. It's hands-on, minds-on learning. We want the students to get their hands dirty. We want them to have an experience. We want them to touch things where it's safe. We want them to explore and investigate. In things like this, there's often a lot of surveys, but surveys are great because science is an understanding of the real world around them. This kind of energy, sound, light is always interesting because it drives technology. It drives modern technology. I love that diagram on that page. We have a smartphone, a tiny smartphone that fits in your pocket. And not that long ago, that would have been a record player with lots of big discs. It would have been a camera, a huge camera. It would have been 1,000 books on magazines and videos and films. It would have meant so many different resources that are time consuming, space consuming, and were very, very, very expensive. I went somewhere recently and it showed me an ice like cave where they used to keep food chilled, and it said it would have cost the equivalent of £13,000, and now you can pick one up in the UK for, I don't know, maybe 60 or 70. And so we often think that things get more and more expensive, but as technology develops, things become simpler almost, and so they're less expensive, they're easier to make. Oh, I'm sorry you had technical issues, Teresa. These labour-saving devices that often don't work for us. So we're making sense of the real world. And as you can see, we've got a Jamaican scientist there, Anthony Chen, who's looking at the saving fuel for transportation, which is kind of important always because we're running out of fossil fuels. We've got Andre Cropper, who's studying energy transformations in televisions. And so these are incredibly flat. They're almost computer screens. They don't release heat energy, as much heat energy, so therefore they're more efficient. We've got marine biologists who are looking at methods of communications in whales. This is all making sense of the real world. So we're encouraging questions about light and sound. What do we know about light and sound? What sounds would you hear in this picture? Which place do you think would be the noisiest? Which would be the brightest? Can you see any transparent, translucent, any opaque materials? Notice that we're using this vocabulary. A teacher once challenged me and said, students can't use words like sterile. That's ridiculous. And so in the lesson, every opportunity I got, is it sterile though? Miss, can I eat this candy? Is it sterile? Are you sure it's sterile? Is the plate sterile? Miss, can I have a drink in this classroom? Well, have you touched anything that's not sterile? Are you sure? By the end of it, one of the students said to me, Miss, you said sterile about 3 million times this lesson. Why? And I said, what does sterile mean? And he told me, and I said, that's why. So if we model it and we repeat it and we show how it's used, it's almost subconsciously picked up. So let's not be afraid to use transparent, opaque, translucent, even if it is in this wow, engaging page. Look at the artwork there. So much to talk about. I could run a whole lesson on that artwork. I love this artist who did these. So the properties of light, how does it behave? So how can we teach this? We often say, well, come on, let's have a dark room. All right. Most of the classrooms I work in don't even have curtains and blinds, let alone a dark room. So a dark room is often pretty impossible. So let's have a dark box then. So here we are, we've just got a box. My son actually covered this. I think he was bored one day. He's in his 30s, by the way, and he helps me lots, but he covered that box. So I usually get the children to look inside at what's inside. What is the source of light? What's reflecting light? So they look inside. Well, I can't see anything. Oh, good. So that means that dark box isn't working. Why can't you see anything? Well, there isn't any light in there. Okay, so what would happen if we did put light in and then I'd put it next to a lamp or stick a torch in the hole in the end? Have another look. Wow, yes, I can see things. Okay, so you can see them. So you need a source of light to see things. Okay, where's the light coming from? It's coming from in a straight line into the box. How is it getting into your eye? Well, I'm looking through the hole, so it must be going in a straight line to my eye. So how do I know if anything's luminous or non-luminous. Again, don't be afraid of the language. They need to know it. So if it's luminous, then I can see it if I shine a light on it. Yes. Or if it's non-luminous, I can't see it at all. And often we have lots of things that are luminous that we really don't believe. Like at the bottom of the ocean, there are some jellyfish, there are fish in the ocean, there are things underground that are luminous. They make their own light. And so we can put things like that inside as well. We could also put a mirror in there. Is the mirror luminous? Is it a source of light? Well, no, it's not a source of light, because when there isn't any light going into the box, I can't see it. So what does it do? It reflects light. And so we're introducing all this new vocabulary just using an old box that doesn't need to be covered, but it does look pretty. And there on that page, again, we've got the talking points. They're not assessments. They are to stimulate discussion. We've also got a challenge. You can see the cup there next to the number 1. That's a challenge. It's something that we wouldn't expect from that particular lesson that the children would know, but we're trying to get that curiosity generated. We're trying to get questions being asked. We're trying to get them to be interested. And so again, we've got Robert Rashford, the Jamaica scientist who's developing parts of aircrafts, Hubble Space Telescope. We've got the fascinating fact and the picture, all to get that engagement and that inquiry and that thirst for knowledge and the question asking. So how can we prove that light travels in straight lines? Well, we can carry out investigations, pieces of card, pinholes, line them up. If they're not lined up, the light doesn't come through. Simple investigations like that. What else have I got on sound? On light, rather. I use things like this for younger children, hung outside in trees or on boundary fences. And as they blow around, and I like to put them on elastic bands, because then when you hang them up, they move, and as they move, they reflect the light differently. And I challenge them to see if they can make a rainbow, because if they reflect the light just so, you can see the spectrum. And then we can start to think about colour. So that addresses, or begins to address, the previous challenge question. So we could hang lots and lots and lots of those around, show how they reflect the light differently and how they actually separate the spectrum, separate white light into a beautiful spectrum of colour. And I salvaged these from the dustbin because someone was throwing them away, because we don't really use CD-ROMs very often, do we? We can also use these for a brilliant activity where you glue a button to the centre and you pull it and they spin and they make spinners. And you might think, well, that's a pointless exercise. What's that got to do with light? Because they reflect the light brilliantly. And if you stick on it a piece of paper and colour in the spectrum, all the different colours, if you spin it fast enough, all the different colours blend into one, and it proves that it's white light, that white light is made up of the full spectrum of colour. And so they are free. The elastic bands, my postman drops them because he knows I like them, and I pick them up, so they cost me nothing. The disc came from the dustbin, so that costs absolutely nothing. And it proves that light is made up of a spectrum of colour, easily, efficiently. Or we're using the cards with holes in them that you've just made holes in with a pin or a nail, and that works really, really well also. You can also give students the straws that bend. I should have one somewhere, but I can't find one. You can get them to hold the straw straight. Can you see light through it? Yes, I can. Bend it. Can you see light through it? No, I can't. That's because light travels in straight lines. It will not go round the corner in the flexible straw. It will just stop. It might reflect some light back, so you'll see the straw where it stopped, but you won't see any light coming in through the end of the straw because it doesn't go around corners. It will just stop. Light travels in a straight line. Those investigations have proved that light travels in a straight line, and they've also proven that light is made up of a spectrum of colour for nothing, virtually nothing. So continue to investigate. You could actually make a ray box. So the box that I just showed you, if you put a source of light inside and cut a slit in the end rather than a hole, put a torch inside and that becomes a ray box, so they can actually see that the light is in a straight line. The light ray is in a straight line. We've got lots of investigations and they're all kitchen science. As I've explained before, if it costs too much, then you won't be able to afford to repeat it. You won't be able to let the children explore and investigate at their own pace and repeat it as many times as they need to so that they fully understand it if the resources are expensive. If we're using an old box and a torch, we can repeat it, we can allow them to explore and get that hands-on experience of light or anything that you're investigating for that. I also like to do this one. Some students think this is magic. I like to look at mirrors. I like to give them a mirror and let them see themselves and then switch the lights off, and now you can't see themselves because the light is traveling from the source to your face to the mirror and back to your eye again, and that's how you see yourself. If there isn't a source of light, the mirror can't reflect anything. It can't reflect light. It isn't a source of light. It just reflects the light from the source, which could be a bulb or the sun. Remind students to be very careful if you're using the sun as a source of light. It is incredibly powerful. If it's strong enough to burn your skin, it's strong enough to damage your eyes. So just remind them. I know that we take it for granted. Just remind them why we wear sunglasses, to actually protect our eyes. This investigation works wonders every time. So ask the children to look at the pencil. What can they see? They can describe it. 2 straight edges, could even measure it if you wanted to. And then a glass of just ordinary water. If everything's sterile, they can taste it to prove that it's water. Often students tell me, well, that's because it's not water. Well, it is water. So taste it if you don't believe me, if that's safe. What do you think will happen to the way that the pencil looks when we put it into water? And most students will say it will look the same. Why would it change? But yeah, it does, because it looks wider and the colour looks brighter, because light travels through different mediums differently. It sends the rays off in different directions, and so we refract the light. It's a process of refraction. It can change. So this proves that it's energy. So the energy coming from the light source is hitting the medium, the surface of the glass. As it travels through the glass into the water, it refracts. It changes the speed that the energy is flowing at, and it can change the direction, which distorts the way that it looks when it comes back to our eyes. This can be developed further into what happens in a greenhouse. The energy, the light energy goes through the glass, it gets in the greenhouse, it's completely refracted. And then when it tries to get back out again, it can't. It can't pass back through the medium because it's changed speed and direction. It's a different energy source. And therefore it gets hot because the heat can't get out again, but it can get in. And that kind of is an introduction to global warming as well. So light is an incredibly interesting topic if the students are allowed to explore it. If I'd been in school today, I would have brought a glass rod home just to show you that if you put the glass rod in the water, it disappears. And then I would ask them to predict what would happen if you put the pencil or the glass rod in other materials. For example, baby oil, cooking oil, olive oil, all the different oils. I'm desperately trying coconut oils, all the different liquids that we use that are clear. We can explore, does it refract the light energy in the same way? And the answer is no, it doesn't. Because some oils, the purer they are, the more they act like water. But the less pure, the more properties that are in the liquid, in the oil, it diffracts differently, it refracts rather differently. And so we see something different. The pencil, the rod changes in different materials. Let the students open a bottle of water, pour it themselves into the glass, yeah, to avoid their disbelief. That's a good one. But then my students would have said, yeah, but you've opened this bottle before. You know, we have to do what we can do. Investigating shadows is great fun. I really enjoy doing this with students of all ages, actually. But I worked we had a really long lockdown, as I know you did, with some young students online. And they were actually going outside at different times of the day and drawing their shadow on the pavement with chalk. And then they were going back and drawing the shadow on top of it. And it was awe-inspiring that their shadow changed. And I said, why have you changed? And they said, yes, I've changed because my shadow's changed. And I said, really? And they thought about it and said, no. So I said, well, I wonder what's changed then. So from that day of going in and out and drawing their shadows, they realised something magical to them. One of them also drew a picture of themselves on the road and took a photograph, and he'd made himself look like Superman flying over all the tops of the houses because his shadow was so huge, and thought that was fascinating. Telling the time, great fun again. Also, real world science. This is how we used to tell the time. Why don't we tell the time like that anymore? Because the time would change as the seasons change, the shadows would change, and so it's not very accurate. Whereas modern methods of measuring time are much more accurate and increase in accuracy, which means that we can also share resources, we can share results. When we're timing things in science, we can share them with people all over the world. Where if we were using shadows to time something, we wouldn't be able to share results because we'd all get something different. So the properties of sound. Now, I love this. Now, we do the age-old one with the ruler, don't we? And we make it make different sounds as we move it. And so the frequency changes. It's quite interesting to a certain extent. We can make a little oboe with a straw in a V at the end, and we can cut it down so that we can show that the sound changes as it travels a different distance in the straw. That's exciting. We can use a drum with some rice on it. That's boring, and I do not understand how that teaches that sound travels in vibrations. They can see the rice bouncing, I'll grant you that, but I'm not convinced that that teaches vibrations. Yeah, we can use the internet, but I don't actually like using the internet because that to me is a demonstration. And what are we aiming for? Hands-on, minds-on learning. So it's a great resource, but not always. Or you can use a balloon. And you're thinking, yeah, you stretch the balloon, you put rice on it and it bounces. No, you can use a balloon, you can blow it up and you can talk to it. And you can feel the vibrations on your lips. So that proves something to my mind. You can use a nut like that. Can you see that? A nut. Make sure it's got pointy edges. You put the nut. Hi, Antigua. Okay, yeah, open the bottle, that's fine, great. Open the balloon, drop the nut in, if you've got a really, really big balloon, you can use a really, really, really big nut. Or if you've got a small nut balloon like I have, you use a smaller nut. You put the nut in the balloon, you blow it up, you tie the top off. And what happens? Well, if you move it a little bit, you can hear, ooh. And if you move it a lot, now that to me teaches more about sound travelling in vibrations than anything else, because when the students do that and it bounces from side to side, they feel the note bounce once or twice and it makes a deep, quiet sound. When they get it going faster, they realise that the note, they can feel it, it's bouncing on the sides more. And what happens to the sound? It gets louder as it goes faster, and it gets higher. And as it slows down, it gets quieter, and it goes the pitch. Okay? I love that. Word of warning. If they get carried away and they make it go really, really fast, it does make quite a high-pitched sound. That's great, that's fine. But remember, the reason that the sound is changing is the amount of collisions that the nut is having on the inside of the balloon. So at every tap, 1, 2, 3, 4, is the frequency. So the more taps, the more the vibration, the more the balloon vibrations, the higher the frequency. That causes friction, as you know. It causes friction and it causes static and it builds up on the inside. And it's great fun, but it's not very safe. It pops the balloon and the nut goes flying out. So I trust my students to do this at a very young age. But just be careful and let them know that if they go too crazy with it, it will break. I also like this investigation. I love this one. I did this investigation last week with some adult teachers and it was hilarious. So you get a metal spoon and you hit it and listen. What can you hear? Very dull, boring noise. But you can feel the vibrations, right? If you tie some string to it, so you've got 2 loose ends like that, and you scrunch up the ends, and you can either stick them in your ears, or you can just touch them against the bone on the side of your ear. And if you do that, and you lean forward and bang it on the desk, with this in your ear, oh, you listen to what you can hear. Doesn't sound like that. It sounds amazing. So one of my students said, yeah, but miss, that sounds rubbish. It does sound rubbish. But when the vibrations travel up the string into your ear, it sounds like a bell. And if you use something like this, it sounds amazing. It really does. And they can feel the vibrations in the string. You can actually feel them, and you can feel them being transferred into the bone. So for me, that teaches more about sound vibrations and sound travelling in vibrations than any rice on a drum ever did for me. Okay, when the balloon pops, then it provides part of the inquiry. It does, Alicia, but I honestly, if you get it going really, really fast, the nut flies out because obviously it's got all that energy stored up in it, and it literally flies. Now, if you think about it, they're quite heavy, some of them, you know, if you use this one makes a great noise, but it has to be a really, really good quality balloon. These are not brilliant quality, and they've been stored in my garage, so they were quite porous when I brought them in. So the bigger the nut, the better the sound, but it has to be a good quality balloon, because when they pop, it will fly off, and so we've got to keep safe. It's got to have corners, not one of the round ones. It's got to have corners, because the frequency occurs when each corner hits the inside of the balloon. Okay, but you know, if you have a go with that, please do feel free to send me any recordings or any pictures. I'd love to see that. So sound pollution is really important, as is light pollution actually. So sound pollution actually is a noise that we find uncomfortable. That noise doesn't necessarily have to be loud. It can be loud, high-pitched, or just repetitive. So a very quiet sound, but if it's repeated over and over and over for hours and hours and hours and hours, it's actually pollution. So we do need to monitor sounds so that we can prevent pollution, because noise pollution can cause health problems. It can actually lead to deafness if it's above a certain decibel. It can lead to anxiety, depression, lots of different illnesses, all created by sounds. A whisper is about 70 decibels, so this gives us the opportunity to introduce a unit of measurement for sound, the decibel, lowercase d, uppercase b. Pain is felt at about 120 decibels for most people. You can use the internet here. I love doing this. If you play a sound frequency and ask an assortment of people in your room, if you've got teaching support, and you've got support teachers or teaching assistants, other teachers around other classes, when the sound's played, there are lots of them on the internet, on YouTube especially. When you play that, when do we stop hearing it? And there's a particularly good one, and it's amazing, because near enough every single time I've ever done it, apart from my son, who has headphones all the time listening to music, and he is the only person I've come across who can hear better than he should be able to for his age group. So that's just not fair. But it's great to do that, because the children can see that we can hear at different levels. In lots of places, they've played at certain frequencies so that students, young people, don't congregate in certain areas, because it's actually annoying. It's a really high-pitched sound, and so they move away. They don't loiter in places where they're not wanted. They're also available for cats, to deter cats, because they can hear a frequency different to what we can. Okay, so echoes are interesting. I like to get students to talk to the wall, because they predict they won't hear anything, and when they do, they're quite surprised. To talk to each other through doors, glass doors, brick walls. Can you hear anything? Gosh, yeah, I can actually, because sound travels through most mediums. It just travels at a different speed, and it often, as it goes through the medium, changes direction, so it sounds different. So when we're in the swimming pool and there's that echoing loud noise, a lot of that is because when we're in the water, the sound's traveling differently. When we drop our goggles and they go to the bottom of the pool or the sea, we often can't pick them up again, because we go like that and the goggles are here and we can see them over there because the light has been refracted. So these are all real world experiences. When we're encouraging inquiry-based learning, we very rarely review. As we said yesterday, we often don't have time as professionals to review and reflect, and therefore we don't as students. So we need to incorporate opportunities. Here's a project, a little project to allow students to go away. It could be done through different styles of learning, remote learning, and so they could explore this as much as they want to, or as little as they want to, using projects where we are totally, truly inquiry-based practitioners, because we're guiding them with the project, but they're going and doing their thing, and they're addressing their own curiosity and answering their own questions. You've been fantastic. I have had some great responses in the chat there, and I love that. Thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed this session as much as I have. It's been great, and I really love the fact that you've engaged with this. If you have any questions today, we've obviously run out of time because I had so much to tell you. But if you tell me, if you ask your questions, I will address them tomorrow. I promise I will at the start of the session. Or if you review later and you have other questions that are more time consuming, shall we say, then please drop us a line here, and I promise I will address everything I possibly can. But if you want to send me any pictures or any ideas, I would absolutely love that. So thank you, Patricia. That's so kind of you. Thank you, everyone, for all of your engagement. Sorry, I'm reading and talking. It's so rude. Anyway,
thank you, Debbie. That
you.
was fantastic. Thank you. That was really good, and I love the demonstrations. I love those. That's brilliant, and I'm sure everyone will come away with some great ideas to bring back to their students. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today and giving up your time to come and listen to our session. I'm sure you all found that very useful. As Debbie says, please do let us know if there's anything that you have any questions about, or if there's anything you want us to cover in future sessions, using the contact details on the slide. So after the session, we'll send you a certificate, and then we'll be sending you in the next day or so the slides and the recording for you to watch again if you think you've missed anything. And please do join us if you haven't signed up already for our last session, which is taking place tomorrow at the same time, and that is covering properties and uses of materials. And if you've attended all 3 sessions, you will receive some special e-resources. So please do come along if it's your first session, if it's all 3, if it's your second, just do come along. We'd love to see you there. And thank you again, Debbie, for hosting that. It was brilliant. And thank you so much for everyone for joining us and for all the kind messages.
Yeah, they're lovely. Thank you so much.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, and hopefully see you all tomorrow.
Bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks.